It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, September 2nd. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is going to get an outside perspective on where the Flyers stand with part two of our interview with Joe Yerdon.
Always interesting to go outside the realm.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's start the show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, I'm Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with the lovely and talented Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. That's where you'll keep up to date on all of our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. On today's show, like I said, we are going to give you part two of our conversation with Joe Yerdon. We talked a lot about the Flyers off-season moves and looking ahead to this upcoming season and where they might stand. Really fun conversation. So looking forward to bringing you that. Locked On Flyers is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you listen to podcasts. So subscribe. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Plus, we're over on YouTube. So subscribe over there as well. Before we get into our conversation with Joe, just want to touch on a little bit of info about John Tortorella. It's September now. Training camp is going to begin this month. Summer is coming to an end, and NHL.com did an interview with John Tortorella. And there was an interesting quote in there about readiness for training camp. So I'm just curious what you thought about what he had to say.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's very old school, sending a letter to the players about training camp. I honestly don't ever hear about that. I see it was done in the old days. I'm not sure it's done much today, even with a new coach, but he's sort of spelling things out. But I think the minute that he got hired, players were on notice. And I think now they're really on notice because he's like, listen, I know that they know that this is going to be, a camp that's a little different, but they don't know it until they're in it. And the best thing I could just tell you is if you just watch series like Hard Knocks in football or things like that, or even just if you've ever had a managerial change at work, you could kind of tell when you've all of a sudden got a guy that's going to run you hard and all of a sudden things have changed. And so now the Flyers training camp will be the hardest that we've witnessed in the last 5 years. That's no slight to the other coaches. That's just the way this coach does it. And I think the players know it now.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and it kind of makes sense that you never really know what something is like until you've been through it. Somebody could explain it to you, but you just don't know until you're there, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
seems to be alluding here to, and we'll put a link to the article in the show notes so you can read the full quote because it's a doozy. But
It is.
I think that one of the things that he's trying to accomplish here is have these guys kind of go through it together and really bond over going through a very difficult camp. So they've already been through adversity before they hit the season, which is going to be objectively difficult for the Flyers.
Right. I think that's a great way to do it. They're all going to, sort of huddle together and bitch about it in their off time until it becomes second nature. But at the beginning, it's going to be very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. With that, we will get to our conversation with Joe Yerdon. So, Joe, switching over to the Flyers, just curious to get your outside the Philly bubble perspective on the Flyers off season this summer and what you think of Chuck Fletcher's effectiveness the past couple of seasons as GM.
So when the offseason started, one of the conversations I had with Lance Lasowski on maintenance day, because there were so many job openings, with teams, and we looked at all of them. We're like, which team is the one you least want to? If you're a coach, is the one you'd be like, nope, I'm not doing that one. And my pick was Philly because I just looked at the roster and I looked at the situation and how things were going. I was like, I don't see this getting better within the next few years with the current setup. And having watched how they played the last couple of years, I was like, I don't like where this is heading. There's some good talent there, but they've been lost in the woods. And last season was really a big crowning on that because there was nothing that was going right, top to bottom. And the worst part of it was that a lot of the younger players were really suffering because of it. Obviously Hart was a big one where, he's hurt, but then he plays and he's not great. Then it's like, okay, then, Provorov started to struggle and you're like, oh boy, okay. And then Provorov's fighting with the media and you're like, oh boy, this is going in all kinds of bad places. But the fact that Torts picked Philly was fascinating because I figured, well, Torts probably wants a place where he's not going to get headaches. He's going to get nothing but headaches in Philly. But to me, that's the kind of challenge that a guy like him loves.
Right.
He recognizes that there's some good talent on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he watched plenty of tape of how they played the last 2 years. And he probably made him pull his hair out and he wasn't even coaching them, watching some of the decision-making, some of the, the system stuff, all that stuff where he's going, I don't know what the hell this team's doing. Let me handle this. I can get this turned around. Now, Kenny or not, I don't know.
I mean, not this. I don't think you can this one season.
No, not right away. But I hope fans in Philly are ready for this to be kind of like a Torts figures out whose guys are and they aren't. And I
would say 70% of the fan base is ready for that, even though they were told otherwise. What do you think, Rach?
Yeah, I would say that's about right.
Yeah. So I don't know. To me, Philly's always entertaining. I love Philly. There's no reason for me to love Philly or the Flyers or any of that, but like Philly, like Flyers fans are some of my favorite people around because they are very locked in on reality to a point where they're almost like, and this is going to sound like a damning praise, but it's very Leafs-like with, at least with fans on Twitter anyhow, where the gallows humor is outstanding.
Right.
Like Flyers gallows humor is some of the best stuff out there, and it's the best way to cope because if you let the bad news drown you out, you're gonna suffer even more. But if you can handle it with aplomb and just kind of roll with it and just be like, all right, well, what did you expect? This is, of course, how it turns out. But it's, I don't know. It's a team that I would like to see play more younger guys, which I think they kind of have to this year. I don't think there's too much of a choice, but I don't know. I don't know. It's really tough just because I do there's a lot of guys there I do want to see succeed. Like I love Couturier, remember covering him when he was in Glens Falls with during the lockout season. He was just like a wide-eyed kid that year, just kind of learning the ropes of pro hockey and all that stuff. And here he is in freaking Glens Falls, New York, playing in this old barn with Terry Murray coaching him and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, this is a heck of a setup for you, bud. Welcome out of Quebec, and you're just going a couple hours.
Although the Flyers missed Terry Murray, he retired. They still could have used him a couple more years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, listen, not everybody gets the chance to go coach in Buffalo. For with who did he jump in? He jumped in with Bilesma, I think.
Yeah,
Bilesma's assistants, I think. So I don't know. That was 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's certain guys in the Flyers that I've been reading about for years where it's like, well, where are they? When's it going to happen? When's it coming together? Morgan Frost is one of them. I'm just kind of like, when's this guy going to take off? Like I've been hearing about him for like 5 years. It feels like. When's it happening? And it felt like for like 3 years he was being held down against proper thought, and now it's like he's there, and it's like, what's he doing? Like, what's happening? Like, how's this going to work? But yeah, it's I don't know. It's it's going to be very interesting to watch them. Obviously a lot of Chuck Fletcher's moves I don't agree with. I don't think that puts me in the minority at all.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the Flyers, I'm taking stock of where the Wild are right now after Chuck left and being like, wow, weird. That's funny. They're really good now. That's interesting. They were kind of average before, and then now they're really good. It's interesting.
Only took 2 seasons.
Right. Listen, Guerin did a lot of work there, but also there were some of those draft picks that Chuck made that like just kept them in the minors or kept them abroad and was just kind of like, no, we'll take our time. And
they're all here now, Joe.
Joel Eriksson next to number 1 center. Like, wow, weird. That's crazy. I don't know how that happened.
All right, we'll be back with more with Joe Yerdon coming up next. But first, betonline.net is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find league reviews and news on every league, including Major League Baseball and all the info leading up to the upcoming NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons. They even cover combat sports, esports, and golf, too. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to scores and podcasts and more. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events. So head to the BetOnline website today or use your mobile device. You can learn more about all the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So the other part, I think, of what Chuck Fletcher kind of struggled with, and again, looking for your sort of outside perspective on this, we saw a whole bunch of teams this offseason clear cap space to make moves. And for some reason, Chuck Fletcher was like, can't be done. Can't do it.
His quote was, it's hard to do it.
It's hard to do it. So what do you think about that? Do you think he just wasn't willing to pay a high enough price, or that people kind of wanted to charge him more, so to speak, because they knew what kind of spot he was in? But do you think it really was doable and he just couldn't get it done? Or do you really think it is that hard?
I think, well, it depends on, I guess, who you're trying to trade with. Because if you're trying to trade with another team that's got cap issues, yeah, it's going to be really hard. Like, that's going to be exceedingly difficult. And of course that team would want to extract a price out of you for taking on somebody who makes a bunch of money, James Van Riemsdyk. But I mean, like there was something that was kicking around that Buffalo was a place that Van Riemsdyk could have gone, but it would have cost Philly like a first round pick down the road. I mean, I can understand not want to do that. I get it. Like, because you're about to start rebuilding, I guess, in a way. Can't be just coughing up first rounders, but I don't know, if you need to free up that money, well, you got to buy him out and keep, you're going to keep 2/3 of that on your cap for 2 years. No.
Well, that's the delicate position, because had they just said they were rebuilding, then at least it's like, okay, I get it if you jettison some more guys out. Now, the first rounder still, I get it if you don't want to do that. But for a lot of other things, it would have eased up the angst. And I think the fact that Chuck was trying to go with that message for as long as he could, until it was so obvious that even the coach can't go along with it, that, then it's just like, okay, well, whatever. It doesn't matter what I said.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand, because I'm looking at their draft picks. Like, they don't have a second rounder the next 2 years. Like, okay. You gave away 2 top 60 picks in other trades. Like, okay. Like, they add, they got a conditional one with Florida. Okay. That, in 24. Like, all right. But I mean, your farm system needs help. You have to have a better influx of talent, and you don't have the picks to really help make that happen. That's a really hard spot to be in. Now, obviously, like, you can address that by trading out somebody who's very talented and pulling picks from somebody else. But at that point, like, if you're saying like, no, we're not rebuilding, well, you're lying completely by doing that. But it's like, what guy would they move that's going to get him, that's going to be able to bring in a first instead of giving away a first to take somebody away? Like, that's,
well, the sad part is, the thought was maybe Travis Konechny could, and I guess we found out that he probably couldn't. And then the one guy who could is Travis Sanheim, but Torts probably wants to see what he can do with him, but he's also a UFA at the end of the year. So it's that's another situation.
Yeah, that's a tough spot. I mean, hey, listen, they got Tony D'Angelo to, kind of fill things out, I guess. But
sure.
he plays on the back line. He's not much of a defender back there, but he's going
to be the number 2 as like right now currently constituted.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah. I had to look to see if Torts coached him the first time around in New York, and no, he did not.
No, he didn't.
No.
That's going to be
before his time.
Really interesting. That's going to be really interesting. And also, like, that might be the other guy where it's like, teach this guy how to play defense, because he can certainly play offense, but man, he couldn't defend me on the ice, and I can't skate. So
yeah.
But like, I don't know. I know some of the signings didn't make sense. Delorier. I love Delorier, super dude. I don't know how he's getting 4 years. Like that made no sense to me. I'm at a loss. I just don't understand how a 4-year contract for Nick happens. Good for Nick. I'm glad for him. He's got family and the whole thing, but like, geez, dude, like I don't know. I don't know, but you look up and down the roster, and it's not very impressive. And you're hoping for, I know you're hoping for like a Noah Cates to maybe take a step, or Bobby Brink, or when he's back. Owen Tippett, maybe finally, because it took him forever to get to the NHL. Maybe now he can take a jump. Maybe Farabee takes another step. It's a lot of ifs going into the season, and if you got a lot of ifs, you got a lot of problems, and that's where it's at for them right now. And I don't know, but trying to free up money, I don't know. I'm looking at some of these, some of the bigger cap hits, and I'm like, well, A, how are you moving them? B, who's taking them? They just signed D'Angelo. They're not trading him. Provorov's money, like, you're not giving up on him yet.
They could have bought out JVR.
Yeah.
I'd have bought out JVR.
He's the only guy that would have made sense. But I can understand Fletcher being like, well, I don't want to have a cap hit spread out over 2 years. It's like, well, that saves you a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you're committing, a player's worth of money to next year. But like who's that money? Who are you possibly taking out of your own hands by moving that money? Like, who are your UFAs now? Morgan Frost, Cam York, like those guys aren't going to get giant cash ins yet. Like, they're not.
No, and even Sanheim won't.
No. So and Sanheim might not even be in Philly after the season. So, I don't know. I wish there was a way I could describe how Fletcher runs things, but it's so much of it is about now. He manages so much for now that he's not even really focusing on a year or two down the road, where that's where your focus has to be all the time. Like, you got to manage now, but you got to make sure things are taken care of.
They say they're managing both, Joe.
Well, I'm looking at their cap friendly, and I got to say I disagree with that.
Yep,
because I don't know. Some of the the Risto extension made 0 sense. It just made absolutely 0 sense. 4 years for D'Lo, okay, right, whatever. The Atkinson contract, I didn't hate that. It's just he's a little bit older for it, and now he's 33, and it's like, might be looking every bit of 33 soon. Like, it's the same age as Van Riemsdyk, and Van Riemsdyk, they're kind of like, yeah, he's done. It's like, well, guy the same age has got 3 more years with you, bud. Like,
well, at least they're different in the sense that Atkinson has legitimate jump when he plays, when he's healthy, and you don't really see that jump very often out of Van Riemsdyk other than occasional games.
I don't really think of JVR as a guy with jump. Like,
once in a while you'll see like a spring in his step on a shift, and he'll get in there and he'll get a goal. That's what I mean. I don't mean like burning speed or anything. I just mean like I just mean like a burst of energy. I hate to say it like that, but a lot of times you don't see that out of JVR.
I wonder how much of that is because of how much of a bummer the situation is, where you just, you go into a game and then suddenly you're down 2-0, 7, 8 minutes into the game. You're just kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, this stinks. You have to be a pro, obviously, and not think that way, but after a while, like, how does it not set into your mind? I've always said this about the Sabres for years. Like, It's like, well, you just got to get over losing. It's like, well, what if you've been here for 5 years and you've been losing for 5 straight years? How do you address that in your mind? How do you not start going, well, here we go again, the second
That's
things
fair.
get rough, you know?
And he's
It's
a good
tough.
guy. He doesn't rock the boat, but
No,
whatever.
I'm a big fan of JVR. I loved him in Toronto, but yeah, I don't know.
Very stylish fellow as well.
Yeah, and like loved him in college too. I watched him a bunch at UNH, and it's funny because when he went back to Philly, the other team that was interested in him was Buffalo, and I remember thinking that's not the right guy for Buffalo to be going after right now. And this was under Bottrell, and they were trying to shake off all the Murray missteps. And then it's like, you're going to give $7 million a year to JVR on a team where I don't know where he fits. Like, is he going to play on Eichel's line? Maybe. Like, I don't know. I don't know where you'd put him on those teams. But
right.
I mean, probably a good thing for Buffalo to do it, but he wouldn't have been a bad idea to try to grab him, you know, and to get a pick out of it too, you know, from Philly this year. But it would have been another. The Buffalo forward house is very crowded already, and I don't think they wanted to crowd out Quinn or Paterka from getting a shot. So I get it. Like, I get it, but yeah, I don't know. It's a mess for Chuck Fletcher, and half of it's his own doing.
All right, we will wrap up with Joe Yerdon and get to our gritty thing of the week next. But first, an important message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you're using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high or get a DUI.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, and that it's going to be real tough for them to compete, but it's going to really have to be the torts factor, I think, going into the season to create some discipline and maybe get more out of the guys that are there. But do you have any sort of final words on where you think the Flyers could end up in the division?
I don't like the prospects right now. I don't know. I don't know. The top half of that division is basically set. I think there's still questions with a handful of those teams, like, you know, Pittsburgh. Are they going to, you know, is Pittsburgh going to finally start coming back to the pack? What does Washington do without Backstrom? I think there's opportunity there for teams to suddenly climb up. But I don't know. Like, you know, I know Columbus is going to be a kind of a sneaky pick for people because, you know, because he had a Gaudreau and all that stuff. But I don't know. Like, the Devils might maybe be better. I know if Blackwood can stay healthy and play. Like, I don't know. Like, you know, Islanders is Lambert going to be able to do anything? No, I don't like how everything about the Isles situation feels very uncomfortable, and you know, Philly's got a whole bunch of problems. So to me, they're a team that's anywhere between 6th and 8th. I think is a fair spot for them. Probably on the lower end of it, though.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely possible. So we'll see how it plays out. But I do think that as far as, you know, taking steps forward, that the Flyers took the fewest of those steps in the division. Let's say.
Yeah, I'll give them some leeway. They might not be the worst team in the East. I think Montreal is going to make a very solid.
There you go.
I think Montreal.
All right. Something to look forward to.
Very solid run at being the worst team in the East. Maybe one of the worst in the league, probably. But I don't know. Marty St. Louis seems like he's got his stuff together there. So maybe there'll be a mild surprise that they won't be as dead set on rock bottom. But I don't know. It's I feel for Philly fans, man. I get it. I get it completely. But geez, it's probably gonna be tough the next couple of years.
Yeah. All right. On that positive note,
I'm so sorry. I think it's only a Buffalo guy saying that. So, it's
That's
it's
true.
probably
That's
not going to
true.
help. That's actually not going to help things out at all. So.
All right. Where can people find you and your work this upcoming season?
You can find our podcast every Monday. It's called Maintenance Day. It's a Sabres podcast, so Flyers fans probably not going to be too excited to listen to it, but we keep it pretty good though. So I mean, obviously I think it's the best podcast on earth, but I don't want to just say that on somebody else's podcast. So that's pretty rude.
But you did.
But I guess I just did. So just listen to it. If you hate the Sabres, listen to it that way too. You can just yell at us. It's fine. But you can yell at me on Twitter at Joe Yerdon, JoeYerdon. Bleacher Report, I'll be doing a bunch of stuff there. Lots of stuff is up there already. Been doing it, having fun with it. Also, Noted Hockey on Substack. I will be doing much more Sabres work there, which again, I know you're probably not excited about it, but don't worry, I'll keep it fun and lively. Please subscribe to it when it's good and ready to go. I mean, subscribe now, obviously, but it'll get much more fun later on.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks.
All right. Once again, thanks to Joe Yerdon for joining us this week. Such a fun conversation. He's a wonderful guy and also very smart about hockey.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. Joe's fun, and he really, he lays it right out there.
He does. All right, wrapping up with the gritty thing of the week. Apparently the NHL had some mascot awards and social media awards, and Gritty was not shy about posting that he was the Triple Crown winner in all these awards. Won Mascot of the Year, Skit of the Year, and Social Media Moment of the Year for NHL mascots. So that's pretty good. All things we covered during the year. The Water Ice skit, which was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one way that people can tell I'm from the Philadelphia area, is the way I say water ice.
For sure. You say it weird. You do.
And then the Uncut Gems clip, which was also very funny, that we talked about. And I had to explain it to you because it's a TikTok meme.
You did. Yeah, I mean, listen, good for Gritty. Right now, these off-season awards are great. But when the season starts, I still say that John Tortorella will interact with Gritty once this year, and that will be it. I don't know when it'll happen, but I don't expect any more. So Gritty's going to be on his own this year.
Yeah, the only thing that might be an exception to that is if they do some sort of thing with dogs. I think that
right.
That could change it, but in terms of just a one-on-one interaction, I would be surprised if it happens more than once.
Me too.
All right, that will do it for today's show and for the week. We'll be back again on Monday with the latest in Flyers land. We'll have our nemesis of the week as well. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you, so send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers. You can also email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks again for listening. You made us your first listen today. Now for your next listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. Local team experts from the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey NFL Insiders, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.